The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Utah has a lot to teach the politicians in Washington. Utah has balanced its budgets. Washington is buried in debt. Utah exports more abroad than it imports. Washington has that backwards. Utah welcomes legal immigrants from around the world. Washington sends immigrants a message of exclusion. And on Utah's Capitol Hill, people treat one another with respect. I have decided to run for United States Senate because I believe I can help bring Utah's values and Utah's lessons to Washington. Utah is a better model for Washington than Washington is for Utah.
How many times did old boy say Utah in that 1 minute clip? It's like if you don't know anything else, you know Mitt Romney is now from Utah, not Massachusetts, where he was governor. And he's not running for president. He's running for Senate to replace the retiring Orrin Hatch, who needs to retire because, well, he just should have never been there in the first place. But I digress. Mitt Romney for Senate, ladies and gentlemen. All right. President Trump seems to be excited about it. He tweeted out last night at Mitt Romney has announced he is running for the Senate from the wonderful state of Utah. He will make a great senator and worthy successor to Orrin Hatch and has my full support and endorsement. Well, my. Amazing how times change. And, you know, I thought overnight, I saw the tweet last night. And I thought overnight, well, no way in the world Mitt Romney is going to accept that endorsement. Oh, how wrong was I? Shows you how much I know. You should unsubscribe. No, don't. Stop. Mitt Romney tweeted back 9:56 p.m. last night. Thank you, Mr. President, for the support. I hope that over the course of the campaign, I will also earn the support and endorsement of the people of Utah. Really, Mitt? I mean, listen, I understand politics. And understand that if you take things personally in politics, you won't get far because you may end up having to endorse somebody that you once criticized. And Mitt Romney understands that well. Listen in.
If we Republicans choose Donald Trump as our nominee, the prospects for a safe and prosperous future are greatly diminished. If Donald Trump's plans were ever implemented, the country would sink into prolonged recession. Isn't he a huge business success? Doesn't he know what he's talking about? No, he isn't. And no, he doesn't. A business genius, he is not. Mr. Trump's bombast is already alarming our allies. Let ISIS take out Assad, he said, and then we can pick up the remnants. This recklessness is recklessness in the extreme. Now, Donald Trump tells us that he is very, very smart. I'm afraid that when it comes to foreign policy, he is very, very not smart. Donald Trump lacks the temperament to be president.
I mean, I don't know. Part of me wants to say how magnanimous of Donald Trump to endorse Mitt Romney after all of this, but that's not really in the president's character. He's not a magnanimous person. Donald Trump is willing to hand out an olive branch just for the opportunity to embarrass you and to make you his little shib. That's the only way to describe it. Trump knows full well in the ambition of men. He knows that he can lure a person out from their original hate for him in exchange for an opportunity. You know, soulless, spineless individuals like Mitt Romney. I believe he sat with the president as the president was president-elect. I can't remember exactly the position he was being considered for, most likely Secretary of State. So Mitt Romney, very shortly after making all these comments, went to meet with President Trump, sat with him at a dinner table looking like the person taking a picture on Instagram who doesn't really want to be seen out with the date that he's with. You know, every single one of us, man, woman, boy, girl, we've all been out on the date with well, maybe you haven't, but you've been out with somebody when they took a picture of you. You're like, I was going to go out with you, but I don't want you to post this online. And then they posted online. That's the look that Mitt Romney had in that photo, being Being humiliated by Donald Trump. There's some professional clean words I can use to describe it. So he looked humiliated by Donald Trump, and Donald Trump enjoyed every minute of it. I think Donald Trump gets off on making adults, particularly men, subservient to him, and then flipping it on them and saying, oh, no, I don't have anything for you. Sorry, Mitt. Thank you for taking this picture with me, Mitt Romney. Thanks for going to dinner with me and showing the world exactly how much of a little shit you are. I'm sorry, but you're not going to get the Secretary of State position. And now the president has thrown out one more little olive branch and said, hey, Mitt Romney's going to do good as senator. And Mitt Romney, like the good little Republican that he is, falls in line with the president that his campaign ad that we just listened to subtweeted, talking about immigration, immigrants being welcomed in Utah, but not in Washington. I mean, you literally just subtweeted the president in your campaign art video, Mitt Romney, and yet you accept his glowing endorsement. Didn't someone try to induct Mitt Romney into the resistance at one point? Moving on. I am so in love with these students from Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. I just can't express that enough. Like, what they are doing, they will change the world. They're going to do it. And you know what? We're going to be here to support them. Students from Marjory Stoneman Douglas have said that they will not return to school until legislation has been passed to ensure that this never happens again. Never again, Marjory Douglas, never again, MSD, Marjory Stoneman Douglas, is an organization that was founded by survivors. Look how quick these kids organize. Wow. Founded by survivors, and they had an interview with the Washington Post, and I want to read a particular paragraph. The reporter from the Washington Post said, quote, "You all seem remarkably organized, which is even more noteworthy because at the end of the day, you're still a group of children who just went through something extremely traumatic. How are you doing?" And Alex Wind, who's a 17-year-old junior, he hasn't been on television as much as the other, Cameron Katsky, Emma Gonzalez, but this is what he said. He said, quote, "I'm not going to lie and say that I haven't cried. I've cried a lot. On Thursday, after the shooting, we had 2 vigils held, which were so powerful, such powerful moments to see so many people in Parkland come out and support. And now we're grieving and we're coping, but we're doing it with our voices. This isn't about politicians. This is about victims. We will not let those 17 people die in vain because if nothing else gets done, I am not going back to school. David Hogg will not be going back to school. Cameron Katsky will not be going back to school. Emma Gonzalez will not be going back to school. None of us from the Never Again movement will be going back to school until legislation has been passed and until changes have been made." My God, hear, 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 hear. I love these kids, man. Anything and everything that I can do to support them, I'm going to do. And like I said, don't get tired of the story. We will not get tired of the story here. You don't get tired of the story. I got contacted by the people who are doing March for Our Lives, Georgia, for the entire state of Georgia. They are marching on March 24th at the Georgia State Capitol, starting there. And I've been in touch with them. They've contacted me. We're going to do everything we can to promote it. I'm going to talk about it on every single show, everything that I do. We're going to blast it out. I'm going to get all my relationships with all these other organizations and other big names, and we're going to blast it out there and make sure that we're there. Is there one happening in your city? If there isn't, start one. I don't care if it's a march with 10 people. We have to seize this opportunity. We're being led by children with no fear. And I keep saying that I feel bad that they have to step up like this. But if you think about it in the past, hasn't it always been our youth who stood up and led us in our darkest moments? Think about Vietnam. I mean, the war would not have ended when it did had it not been for college students, late high school seniors going into college, standing up and saying never again. And so so much love and respect for this group of kids as they get ready to take on the world. And all I'm going to do is sit in the background and push them as hard as I possibly can because, wow, they are amazing. This next story is almost unbelievable if It wasn't so believable. According to the Washington Post, a top White House official said that the shooting last week in Parkland, Florida, that killed 17 people at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School was a reprieve for the White House. I want to read the first paragraph from the Washington Post piece. The White House was under siege. Domestic abuse allegations against a senior aide were ignored, pointing to a potential high-level cover-up. 2 cabinet secretaries were caught charging taxpayers for luxury travel. A Playboy centerfold alleged an extramarital affair with the president, and the special counsel's Russia investigation was intensifying. The tumult was so intense that there was fervent speculation that Donald Trump might fire his chief of staff. But a gun massacre at a Florida high school last Wednesday, which left 17 dead, seemed to shift the media glare away from the Trump scandals and gave embattled aides an opportunity to refocus on handling a crisis not of their own making. While the White House mourned the loss of life, in Parkland, Florida, some aides privately acknowledged that the tragedy offered a breather from the political storm. What's that saying? Don't waste a perfectly good tragedy, one president said. I forget who. I'm thinking Truman or Eisenhower. Could be wrong. Wow. Here's the thing. Even in our darkest thoughts, even if we had those thoughts in the privacy of our own brain, some stuff you just don't say out loud. That's number one. And I start there implying that we all have the capacity of saying something extremely insensitive, something extremely offensive and dismissive of pain of someone else. We can all be self-absorbed and self-centered at times. That's where I start. But then I've got to flip it and say most people already know that very simplistic fact that you just don't do something like that. And this is not to make a mountain out of a molehill. We've seen worse from this administration. But this is just part and parcel for what the Trump administration is. A cold, heartless, insensitive, uncompassionate, almost to the point of sociopathy, completely devoid of connection, of the ability to connect empathetically with other individuals and to only see the world through their own personal narcissistic lens. That is the exact perfect definition or explanation or description, rather, of the Trump administration. And here we see it's not just Donald Trump. And this is what I think one point that we've tried to push home quite a bit. This isn't just Donald Trump. Donald Trump is empowered by the people around him. He's empowered by the John Kellys of the world who give him cover and try to make excuses for him, or to the point of trying to defend him when he's absolutely wrong. This wasn't a comment that Donald Trump made. This was a comment that his aide made, whichever aide we're referring to. and so this just it takes more than one individual to create a nightmare. The people around you are the people who actually empower and embolden you to go further with your insanity. And here we see that this person, I wonder if this is something that Donald Trump himself would even have the capacity to say. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't wonder. I know that he would. I mean, did you see the pictures in Parkland, Florida, where he's smiling with his thumbs up at the hospital? People are dying, or at least in critical condition. It's this complete, it's real, right? This is not something, I want to reiterate something that I said and help you to understand that this is not me using fluffy words to try to make something bigger than what it is. I honestly believe that the president of the United States, and now I believe that a lot of people surrounding him, have a complete lack of empathy to the point of sociopathy. They're sociopaths. They can look at a grim, brutal, painful, terrible situation that has changed the lives of hundreds of people in a small town in South Florida and think of it as, at least the news isn't talking about us.
Economic status rather than just what they're wearing.
Let's talk about nuclear weapons.
Okay.
Our viewers, some of our viewers may say, we cannot trust Iran. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts?
I don't think we can trust this country. What has this country done to the majority of the countries in the Middle East? I don't think Iran's having nuclear weapons. I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in violence. But also, when we look at the legacy of imperialism and colonization in the Middle East, and we see the legacy of this country and all of the violence that it has not only created, but also created the capacity for. A lot of these weapons in the Middle East are completely brought in by the United States.
A lot of Americans might take offense to that. You're an American. You don't sound like an American when you say that. You know what I mean?
That's because I've read, you know.
Yeah.
And
That was the voice of Hoda Katebi. She is a political fashion blogger, and her blog is jujuazad.com. She was speaking on WGN, it's a local channel there in Chicago, but they actually broadcast around the nation. And I absolutely love this clip. I heard it last week for the first time, and I wanted to cover it last week, but the news cycle and the tragic news out of Florida threw us off there. And I want to circle back and make sure that we discuss this fabulous piece. It is amazing to hear her so seamlessly explain the problem of the impact of American imperialism and colonialism in general in the Middle East as it pertains to the weaponization, not the weaponization, but rather the nuclear proliferation. But more importantly than her points that she made was that thing at the end that journalist said, or the news anchor said. Listen again.
A lot of Americans might take offense to that. You're an American. You don't sound like an American when you say that. You know what I mean?
That's because I've read, you know.
Okay, notwithstanding that phenomenal clapback, that's because I read, you know. What this anchor did here is absolutely what the American elite, Washington, D.C., members of both parties, the military-industrial complex, everyone who is okay with what America does, or at least complicit with what America does. This is exactly how they need their American electorate and body politic to be. Uninformed and blindly patriotic. I believe firmly that it's far more patriotic to challenge your country to become more and to become better and to live up to the ideals that it espouses. But you know what? Forget about what I think about it. Let's listen to Hoda as she explains it again.
That's because I've read, you know, and I think that it's really important that we look beyond sort of these really simple narratives that we're told, whether it's about Muslim women, whether it's about the legacy of this country, and knowing that this country literally was built on the backs of black slaves and after the genocide of indigenous people. And I think there's a lot that we can be proud about, but I think that we shouldn't let that sort of blindside us for the realities of the situation.
Well, you can check out Hoda's blog at jujuazad.com.
I mean, wow. I am absolutely in love in terms of just being able to precisely and efficiently, without any hesitation or any need to research beyond what's already in her head. Oh man, that was amazing. America, we have a lot of things to be proud of, but we don't have to take a simplistic narrative of American history. This is the problem with our history books. This is the problem with conservatism, right? Honestly, the problem with conservatism is that they refuse to look at the problems of the past and to see how we can improve. They honestly believe that everything is fine. America's just fine, you know, and that's, I mean, both politically as well as economically. And that's simply not the truth. If we can't look soberly at the history of America, then we're not doing America any favors. We're not being more patriotic than someone who calls into question American imperialism and calls into question the brutish nature of our military-industrial complex. On one end, it's brutal in this economically, in that it exploits Americans in order to maintain a military machine that then turns around and exploits and destroys nations abroad. If we can't criticize that soberly, then what are we doing? And this actually dovetails into the conversation about Russia, into the ongoing investigation, and the willingness of both sides, both Democrats and Republicans, who will swap sides of who's going to be the blind loyalist or the blind patriot, right? Who's going to be the individual or who's going to be the group that calls on others to blindly be patriotic and do the right thing for the flag or rally behind the flag? It's like, President Obama in 2012 in his debate with Mitt Romney actually gave a pretty nuanced and a healthy response to the question of who's our greatest geopolitical threat. Yes, Russia was a problem, but Russia's not the number one problem. And Mitt Romney and the Republican Party at that moment, they were asking us for some blind patriotism to view the world through a lens that we haven't had since 1980. Oh, but wait till the Russia probe. The Democratic Party swapped sides with that, and now they're making the same blanket style statements demanding blind patriotism from everyone, and now slamming the Republican Party for and mind you, this doesn't mean that the Republican Party took up the nuanced position against Russia. They took up some weird, really anti-American position with regard to Russia in the sense that they just don't care in order to support the president. It's weird how people will swap sides on an issue as it suits them, as that particular argument is needed to be argued in order to suit their political agenda. It's amazing. And I just absolutely love Hoda here in the sense that she really outlined how we as Americans forget about what political parties are telling us. Yes, there is a difference. No, I'm not drawing a false equivalence between the two, but in the conversation of this blind loyalty and this blind patriotism, rather, I didn't think that we would see this from the Democratic Party. But I guess I lived long enough to see Democrats have a nuanced position, generally a peace. I can't really say a peaceful position, but far more peaceful than the Republican Party, and peaceful in their approach and their rhetoric. Now I see, some apparatchiks of the Democratic Party calling for war against Russia. So it's just amazing how easily we can fall into those tropes, that overly simplistic view of the world that America is good and America has always been good and everyone else is evil. And in her case, Hoda was speaking of Iran and the problem of nuclear proliferation. Yes, Iran is a problem because they are creating a situation. They are creating weapons that they should not be creating, or at least prior to the Iranian nuclear deal, right? But simultaneously, we can't talk about it without the context of American influence and American interference, American imperialism. We can't talk about it outside of that context, because it's actually in that framework that the nuclear deal, which I think is an amazing deal, even exists. If you don't look at the world through the lens of American imperialism soberly and see the reach of American power and American hegemony, how do you explain the reason why Iran was forced to acquiesce on so many things in the Iranian nuclear deal? It's not like they're not going to capitulate to Costa Rica. They're going to capitulate to our modern empire that we all participate in, and that we all, at some levels, no matter how much we criticize it, we're all complicit with. Because we really opposed it. Wouldn't we protest it to the point of going to jail, not paying our taxes? But that's an entirely different conversation. I should not have even opened that can of worms. That's all the time I have for you this morning. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. It's always a pleasure. Patrons, thank you so much for what you do. You guys are amazing. I can't do this without you. The rest of you, what's going on? No guilt, no pressure, but you get quality content, right? Okay, no, let me stop doing that. But no, seriously, why aren't you a patron? Well, I mean, I get it. Most of us are probably broke, so I get it. But $1? Okay. All right, I'm going over the top today. Sorry. Let me dial it back. Go to patreon.com/the BPD show and become a patron today. See you tomorrow, everyone. Have a great day.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.